This NFL Week 5 injury update and news and player prop targets edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to get 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
And taking a shot to Brown downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, what as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Metcalf.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. NFL Week 5 on the horizon as we put a bow on Week 4. Get you guys ready with all the updated injury news and notes coming out of Week 4. We'll find out who's going to be in, who's going to be out, who may be coming back for the NFL Week 5. But the star of the show, you guys know him as the D-Gen Doc. It's Sebastian Fearon. Sebastian, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
Good, man. How we doing? I know we were just talking about Week 5. I think we're, officially a quarter of the way, potentially, maybe halfway through the week, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, man, it's flying by. I know you mentioned is what sounds worse than the NFL Week 5. It's college football Week 6. So, we crave these times during the summer. We would do anything for a football game, but it just honestly it just flies by. But we've been grinding. I think we've had a lot of fun. At least the first 2 episodes that we've done here for the Propcast, just talk about injuries and things like that. And I think our listeners, I think, are really benefiting from the information that you're providing to them. So hopefully, obviously, we will continue doing that as well and finding, more winners across the player prop market as well. Obviously, the start of Week 5 means we have 4 teams that will be on their bye week, so 2 less games to talk about as the bye week started. And then we have the, I don't want to say first international game, but the first, I guess, European international game that will be starting on Sunday morning between the Vikings and the Jets. Also, we have Thursday Night Football, the NFC South battle between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. So you guys know how we do it here on the show. We'll go through we'll go through the games that have injury concerns. Sebastian will break it down as he does beautifully for all of you listeners, and then we'll talk about some player props that we probably want to target when those props do drop. I know we're a little bit early in the week before the props do drop, and then we maybe, also mention guys that you probably want to look at on your fantasy teams as well to probably pick up for some of these replacements here. So, Sebastian, let's just dive right into it, man. Let's start here on Thursday Night Football. Like I mentioned, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are traveling to Atlanta in a NFC South battle here. We've currently have lines of Atlanta Falcons are favored by 1.5 points, and the total sitting at 43.5. But let's start here with the injuries for this game.
Yeah, no, nice NFC South matchup like you were mentioning here. So we'll start with the Falcons because they're a little bit less on the injury front there. So we've got Bijan Robinson is the big one. He popped up on the injury report with a hamstring injury, limited practice. Now, he did finish the game last week. He wasn't pulled, although Tyler Algier wound up getting more carries than him, so we'll talk about that in a second. But him having a limited practice twice. Now, this is walkthroughs. This is mostly estimation, so I do expect Bijan to play. But a hamstring injury on a short week is something that definitely catches my eye. There also are likely going to be out linebacker Troy Anderson. They already have Nate Landman on the IR, so they're thin at linebacker. They just signed Rashawn Evans to try to off the practice squad. They're very thin at the linebacker position. And then right tackle Caleb McGarry, dealing with that MCL, still limited, didn't play last week. If he does play this week, I still think he's going to be very limited. So 3 guys, not so many guys, but some very, very important positions there. With the Bijan stuff, I think Tyler Algier is a huge guy I'm targeting. Whether injury or not, I mean, his usage has been pretty questionable with how they're using Bijan. They obviously like Algier. Raheem Morris, basically, when they asked about stats, he said stats are for losers or whatever, something of that effect. So Tyler Algier is a guy that I love. I've already, in the alt yards market, in the anytime touchdown, this is where we talk about availability information, kind of getting on this stuff quick, especially in the pops market. I mean, there's stuff today that I've already hit on Algier that's already been dropping and things like that. So for the Atlanta, that's where I'm going. And on Tampa Bay, a bit more beat up there. So wide receiver 3 position, Jalen McMillan dealing with that hamstring injury. He's likely out again with no practice. Trey Palmer, I would say, is definitely out with a concussion on a short week. There's no way the NFL is going to let him play there. So that allows a guy like Sterling Shepard, just signed to the active roster, 3 catches for 50 yards last week. He's a guy I'm targeting, and Cade Otton at the tight end. Evans and Godwin are going to take up a lot of attention. So I think Otton and Shepard have a lot of opportunity. And on the defensive side, it looks like, Kalijah Cansey, Antoine Winfield, still not practicing from their injuries. So it's going to be hard pressed, although they do have a chance. They've been doing some work on the side. But linebacker Savassi Dennis is put on the IR. This is a big one, especially for anyone who plays IDP or likes the tackle props like I do. He's been a tackling machine out of Pitt next to Levante David. Now he's on the IR, so that Bucks team is going to be missing a key piece on defense there.
Yeah, some significant injuries here. I mean, I know we talked extensively about the concussion ordeal with Tua there a few weeks back, and I 100% agree that there's no way on a short week any guy that was put into the protocol is going to be out there on a short week here. So, but yeah, like you mentioned, at the skill positions there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, some opportunities there when it comes to the prop market, right? I mean, I think everybody will automatically pivot to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, probably getting even more targets there. But, I think like you mentioned, Sterling Shepard, this will be the buy low situation for him, right?
Yeah.
For him coming into this game. So curious would be to see if there are props out
so
for him.
For Shepard, not any receiving, but his anytime touchdown. I know I grabbed it at plus 550 earlier today. It's already down plus 450 as it's becoming increasingly clear he's going to be the wide receiver 3 there. Otton's got obviously some receiving props out. I like him. He's at low numbers in like the 30s, to get to plus money there. But I'm waiting for Shepard to come out, and Algier, I'm waiting for some of his receiving stuff to start popping up too.
Yeah, I do see Cade Otton has receptions are at 3.5 plus 115, and then his receiving prop right now, receiving yards, I should say, it's at 28.5. So I think if you're able to find that 30 plus out there, that'll definitely be at plus money for Cade Otton there. Anything else for this game here, Sebastian, before we move it along?
No. I mean, look, both teams dealing with some injuries. I just think that the Bucks have been kind of dealing with most of these injuries before, especially if Bijan's beat up at all. That's a huge blow to the Atlanta team.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. We'll get to the next game with injury implications. That's going to be on Sunday. The Cleveland Browns, they are taking on not the Browns and the Commanders. Let's go to the Ravens and the Bengals. No significant injuries in this one either. And then we'll move it along here. Ooh, a game that I have circled for sure. I'm sure Stephon Diggs has this one circled as well. The Houston Texans, they are welcoming the Buffalo Bills to town. Currently, the Bills are a 1-point favorite here on the road with a total of 47.5. I know the Texans have been dealing with the Joe Mixon injury. Did miss it last week. We did see Cam Akers getting most of the bulk of the carries in that running back room there. But what are we looking at as far as injuries for Bills and the Texans here?
Yeah, we'll start with the big kind of breaking news today. Outside linebacker, edge rusher Von Miller suspended 4 games, personal conduct. A case from last year, right? So he's definitely going to be out. Now, was he an integral part of the defense? No, he kind of got between 15 to 20 snaps, purely like pass rush situations. So he was being pretty productive this year. So it is a little bit of a loss, but he's not like an every down starter. So just something of note there. Sticking with the Bills, pretty healthy coming out. Really, Josh Allen was dealing with a little bit of a hand thing, but he's pretty much going to be good to go. Khalil Shakir picked up an ankle injury during the game, got it retaped, and had that nice, 50-yard bomb that Allen threw to him that cashed all his overs and stuff like that. So, the fact that whenever a guy's able to finish a game and they got something light like that, I'm expecting both those guys to play. And then on the other side of the ball, Tank Dell and Joe Mixon both missed. Joe Mixon dealing with that high ankle sprain. The fact he started practicing last Friday gives me hope for this week. I would say that is a really good indication that he's going to have a really good shot to make it this week. And obviously the Bills, they're a team that is susceptible to the run. The Ravens just showed us that, right? That, if the right team And Joe Mixon, that first week he showed us what he can do. So if he's able to give me at least one full practice next week, I'm cool with him slotting him in my lineup and being confident there. Tank Dell, we'll have to see a little bit more, not as much. They're calling it a chest injury. Usually this is like a rib injury, something like that. So need a little bit more information there. Obviously, we're going to see one to watch for practice reports, but I would be optimistic for Joe Mixon. Tank Dell's a little bit more of a question mark.
Yeah, I mean, Nico Collins has really picked up that production in the absence of Tank Dell, but even with Tank Dell there, he's just having that incredible season right now for the Houston Texans, I believe, leading the league in receiving yards for this season thus far, at least through the first 4 weeks here. So, I mean, I think this Bills team is going to come in pissed off here after what transpired for them on Sunday Night Football. But again, I think this is going to be a really, really great game here between the Bills and the Houston Texans. Sebastian, before we move it along here for the next game that we want to talk about, as far as the injuries do go, Hurricane Helene has been devastating to the people of the Western North Carolina. And SGPN, we're proud of it, of teaming up with a local charity, mountainprojects.org, to help give back. The biggest donation will get a guest spot on CFB Pick Show and a ton of gear as well, courtesy of the merch store. So, do your part. No matter the amount of the donation that you can give, every little bit helps towards those that were impacted by the hurricane there, especially in that Western North Carolina area. So go to mountainprojects.org and hit flood support. Help out today. Appreciate everybody that will chip in. Again, like I mentioned, doesn't matter how big, how small your donation is. Every little bit goes a very, very, very long way to help those that were impacted there. And SGPN, of course, also has the most DGen pregame shows in the world. On Saturdays, the College Experience YouTube show is live starting at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by the NFL on Sundays. A Propcast right here kicks off at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Sundays, and followed by SGP with Sean and Kramer at noon Eastern Time for all your last-second bets, DGen parlays, your calls, and more. So again, tune in for those shows there on Saturday and Sunday. All right, Sebastian, let's move it along here to the next game. Let's go over to the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears. Currently, the Bears are a 3.5-point favorite here with a total of 42. What are we looking at for injuries in this game between the Panthers and the Bears?
Yeah, on the Bears side of the ball, fairly healthy. One of their best linemen, though, Tevin Jenkins, dealing with a rib injury. It's a painful injury when we talk about ribs. Anytime you rotate, you laugh, you cough, you're going to feel it. So he is fighting a little bit of uphill battle, especially on the interior part of that line where things get pretty nasty there. So one to watch for the Bears, but the Carolina Panthers are definitely more beat up at this point. Their best player, arguably on their team, Shaq Thompson, tore his Achilles, is going to be out for the season. This is a huge, huge injury for them. Yeah. Definitely a guy that's going to be irreplaceable. Also, linebacker Josie Jewell's already been ruled out with a groin hamstring injury. And the little bit of good news is cornerback Dane Jackson coming back from hamstring injury. He's set to practice from IR. So they might be getting some help in the secondary, but that linebacking core is going to be very thin. We saw the Bears, get the running game started against a very poor Rams defense. Can they continue that into Carolina? That's kind of something to watch.
Yeah, I mean, a team that already was missing Adam Thielen, obviously, on the offensive side, but I think that injury on the defensive side, like you mentioned with Shaq Thompson, is going to be very, very significant for this Carolina Panthers team. And I know they got the hoorah win in, week 3 against the Raiders behind Andy Dalton, but I feel like they fell a little bit back down to earth against the Cincinnati Bengals, who last week were in a very, very desperate spot, right? Being 0-3 through the first 3 weeks and being able to notch up their first win of the regular season there. So hopefully brighter days are ahead for the Panthers. And you can say the same thing about the Bears here as well. Next game we'll get to here is going to be the Indianapolis Colts. They are in Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Jaguars, one of the winless teams in the NFL right now, and they are currently a 2.5-point favorite against the Indianapolis Colts with a total of 46.5 right now. And of course, more injury concerns at the quarterback positions here for the Indianapolis Colts here, Sebastian.
Yeah, just real quick with you mentioning Thielen. Yeah, I know we talked about it last week, but Xavier Legette is a name to watch out for. You know, this
100%.
team's going to be down a lot. They're going to be throwing. So that wide receiver 2, he hit his over 60 yards last week. That was a nice 350 plus 350 cast there. So a guy that's going to have some upside because they're going to be losing, and it's either Deontay Johnson or Legette.
Yep.
But like you said, this Colts versus Jags game where, hey, the Jags just seem to own the Colts no matter what the records are. So this will be a fun one. Anthony Richardson can't stay healthy. Not a surprise. It's been happening since high school, college. They called it a hip, but it really looked like more of an oblique abdominal. So maybe he's dealing with all three. Right now, it's just bumps and bruises. It's painful, but he's expected to kind of fight through it, to play through it. I'm really more concerned with the play calling. The guy cuts out. He goes to the locker room, comes back. First play, they call a design quarterback run, and he gets re-injured. So that's clearly they don't like, the question coming in this season was, is he going to change his play style to be a little bit more, at least avoid some hits? And clearly that's not happening, and the coaches aren't helping. So maybe they just know Joe Flacco is ready to kind of come off the couch and come right in. But I expect him to play, but he's already coming in banged up, a guy who already has a high injury risk. That's never a good thing. Jonathan Taylor is the other big one there. Awkward mechanism of injury, a little bit under the radar, happened late in the game. Now, it is a mild high ankle sprain. Now, high ankle sprains are high ankle sprains, in my opinion. They are harder to occur because those joints are inherently more stable. So more damage is needed to injure them, which means it takes a longer recovery timeline. So, I'm expecting him to be limited for at least 3 weeks here. Whether he decides to play or not, I'm not super optimistic for this week. Even if he does play, it's someone that I'm not going to be backing. We'll see if he really, somehow runs some full practices out there. The matchup is nice, but as of right now, I'm not too optimistic on Jonathan Taylor. And then they lost another defensive lineman, Tyquan Lewis, who was stepping in for DeForest Buckner. He just got put on IR. So that defensive line is beat the hell up. When we talk about the Jags, something, whether it's ETN or whether it's Tank Bisbee, that's a team that you can run on. So that's something to look out for. Jacksonville side, outside linebacker Josh Hines Allen, in concussion protocol now. Again, we're seeing how they're taking it. Based on what we've seen so far, it looks like he's doubtful for this week. Again, you can clear it in 1 week. It's just based on what we've seen so far. That's not happened very often. Evan Ingram, considered day-to-day. He's been considered day-to-day for weeks. As realistically, he does have a shot to play this week. It's going to be based on practice. And then Travis Etienne should be good to go with the shoulder injury. But, I mean, it's worth mentioning Tank Bigsby's kind of been, really not taking over the backfield, but he's been getting his own there, especially on the ground. So something to watch for.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as soon as Jonathan Taylor started get it going here, just gets, the injury bug catches up to him again. And now with Anthony Richardson, like you mentioned, I mean, last season we saw what transpired for him as well, but I think they have I guess we can say, a pretty good insurance policy in Joe Flacco. We saw what we was able to do last year for that Cleveland Browns team and really got him to wins and get him into the playoffs. I mean, you can't ask for more from a guy at his age, right now for this team. So, yeah, we'll put a pin in that game. I think this might be just the week that the Jags do get their first victory here, Sebastian. So again, like you mentioned, the Jags, for whatever reasons, just have that number of the Indianapolis Colts. All right, before we move it along here to the next game to talk about the injuries here, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has one of the biggest menus for all sports: NBA, NFL, college football, MLB, MMA, whatever the case might be, WNBA, NASCAR as well, and a lot more. Their lobby is jam-packed with profit boosts, and you can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you guys use that promo code MACHINE. All right, Sebastian, let's get over to the next game here. And I really don't want to talk about this game, but again, since we are men of the people here, We'll get to the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. Patriots currently laying a point here against the Dolphins in the AFC East matchup, a total of 35.5. And I don't want to talk about what transpired on Monday Night Football because I think I made one of my worst bets of the season on the Dolphins. And I'm still hurting on that front a little bit. But Tyler Huntley looked like a little bit of a shell of himself in that game. And it just feels like this Miami Dolphins team has really given up at this juncture of the season. And we're not sure where we expect Tua to be back. I know you talked about it. And we talked about it on the first episode that we did here, but let's talk about the injuries, at least for both sides of the or both teams here.
Yeah, I mean, look, with Tua being on the IR, he can't return for at least 3 more weeks, right? Or,
Yeah,
two more, I believe. So, because we had a Skylar Thompson game, and then we had But look, that was brutal. This game is going to be brutal, but as we know,
to say the least,
money does not discriminate. So there's money to be made still. Look, the Dolphins are way more beat up right now. I mean, the Patriots came in pretty beat up already, but for new injury stuff, Kyle Duggar, one of their best players, he was unable to return, seen in a walking boot with an ankle injury. So this would be a big loss for this team. He's a tackling machine there in the secondary. So one to monitor. I would consider him doubtful at this point for this week. You got Jalen Phillips, who's already been ruled out. Now, he was coming back from an Achilles tear. Looked actually pretty damn good for coming off only 9.5 months there. But he picked up a knee injury. He's already ruled out. When someone's already ruled out this early in the week, usually there's concern for multi-week absence. Jordan Poyer already ruled out as well. Safety there. Now, for a little bit of positive news, wide receiver OBJ is set to practice on Wednesday. So coming off the PUP list, potentially – they're opening up his 21-day window, right? So he's basically got 3 weeks from when they start it to, if he doesn't come back, then he's done for the season. So most guys, you would assume, hey, they're expecting him to, somewhat be ready this week. And to end it on a little bit of a sour note, Tyler Huntley will be getting the start again.
Yeah, he will be getting the start here again. It's interesting to me that number one, for this Dolphins team, we know they knew the injury history with Tua with the concussions, right? And I think for whatever reason, I would think that you would want to have a very competent quarterback in case those type of injuries for Tua in particular arise again. And maybe it's not a concussion. Unfortunately for him this season it was, but again, he's just had injuries where it's been lower leg injuries, hip injuries that you would expect them to have a competent, backup quarterback. I don't understand why they let Mike White go. You had options of guys like Jameis Winston out there and things like that, but I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me a lot. But like you mentioned, that we still have 2 more weeks without Tua for the Miami Dolphins. At that point, we'll reassess and see if he's indeed going to be back for this Miami Dolphins team. Sebastian, let's move it along here to the start of the 4:00 games here. We have another division game here, the NFC West, between the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers currently laying 7.5 points here at home with a total of 49.5. And for the 49ers, at least the good news last week was they were able to get some reinforcements back. Did see the return of Deebo Samuel. George Kittle was out there as well for this team. But I think more CMC news comes about every single week, it seems like, even when he's not on the field here. But I'll let you take it away here for the Cardinals and the Niners.
Yeah. Well, we'll start with the Cardinals. At least, other than their pride, they didn't walk away with too many injuries for that game. Letting the rookie hang up more a 40 burger on him. Looks like Trey McBride may be coming back. He's dealing with a concussion, so I would expect him to kind of be back this week. Obviously, you got to watch practice reports, make sure he can get a limited and a full clear the concussion protocol. But most guys do it by 2 weeks. 49ers side of the ball, some questions there. George Kittle did return. He picked up an ankle injury, considered day-to-day. With him, just knowing him, he usually fights through things, so not as concerning there. But Fred Warner, this potentially could be a big one. He was ruled out and unable to return due to pain. He basically said, look, it takes a lot for me to be on the sidelines, and he couldn't go back in. So that tells me it's probably not just a minor low ankle sprain. We might be looking at some type of high ankle sprain. I couldn't find the play for the mechanism, but this is definitely one to watch for. I mean, he's such a huge piece. You don't have Dre Greenlaw already. They're kind of, they're not quite the same unit on defense. He kind of covers up a lot of issues there. We saw him have the pick 6 last week. So if he's out even for, 1 or 2 games, this is a significant change to this defense. So one to monitor for sure. And then of course, CMC took to Germany trip, and it comes out he's got bilateral, both sides Achilles tendonitis. Look, I'm not too surprised about this. As anyone who's dealt with or treated Achilles tendonitis, we're kind of talking about something that is overuse. And hey, is it a compensation issue? It started on one side, so he was favoring in the other side, or was both of these Achilles tendons just getting overworked? Right? It's not super concerning to me. Achilles tendonitis was concerning enough. This doesn't really push anything over the edge. I still think that with the way they're playing it, when he does return, I'm going to be ready to play him as soon as he gets back. When will that be? I mean, I think the bye week of week 10, 10, 11, kind of week 10 to 12 is right now the kind of open projection of where he's going to be. But this news in particular, although a funny headline, is not the scariest thing to me.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the question, is that is it this injury is it because of overusage, or is it something that's workload based? But I think you made that pretty clear there, that it's sometimes it could just be that amount of usage that CMC does get, that it could lead to those type of injuries. So I know you and I talked about this after week 2, that we would probably expect him back after the bye week for the San Francisco 49ers, just kind of giving a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But we'll see what transpires for CMC. Let's get over to another divisional battle here. It's going to be the AFC West teams, the Las Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos. Broncos currently laying 2.5 points in this game with a total of 36. What are we looking at for injuries in this game with the Raiders and Broncos?
Yeah, a couple quick ones here. Denver running back Tyler Batty. We had that scary kind of situation on the sidelines there. We had to get put on a stretcher. He does have full movement and is back with the team. Now, I would definitely not expect him to be playing this week, but just a positive update for a very scary situation. The Raiders side of the ball, Max Crosby still banked up with his ankle. It takes a lot for him to sit out. I think he'll obviously try to give it a go this week, but we'll see how far away he is. Offensive lineman, probably one of the best offensive linemen, Dylan Parham, dealing with Achilles tendonitis, a la CMC. So a situation where this injury will linger. It will not go away, but it seems like they're taking more of the approach of, let's try to calm it down. Let's try to get it as much as we can. We'll see if we can make it through the game and then do the rest recovery and kind of rinse, repeat. Kind of similar to when we were dealing with Stafford's elbow a couple of years ago, where he was, not practicing. It was kind of like a, almost like the NBA, what do they call it? Load management thing. That's kind of really what it is. And then Devontae Adams is the big one. His hamstring injury kind of came out of nowhere. Does he actually have a hamstring injury? It's not for me to decide, but I'll tell you what, he's not happy where he's at. I think watching the receiver, I put the clip out, but if you haven't seen it, last year he was saying I need to get the fuck out of here. They're gonna kill me here, blah blah. So clearly, with that slow start, he's not happy. He wants to get traded. I think for everybody involved, it's best case if they get this trade done.
Yeah, I mean, we got the news on Tuesday afternoon, early evening, that he in fact did inform the Raiders that he does want to get traded, and I think those phone calls have started. Just feels a little bit inevitable at this point that he maybe does end up back with his old quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, but we'll see who does offer the best compensation for the services of Devontae Adams, because there are plenty of teams out there that could use his services, of course. Let's move it along here to the Green Bay Packers. They are going to be in LA to take on the Rams. Rams currently catching 3 points in this game with a total of 48. And for the Packers side, we did see the return of Jordan Love. Was a little bit of rust there in that first half. I think threw a couple of interceptions, and they were pretty much in a negative game script the rest of the way there. But I felt like it was still a week too early for him to possibly come back for this Packers team here. But we can talk about more about Jordan Love here in a second here. But at least what are we talking about what are we looking at for injuries for Packers and Rams here?
Yeah, the Rams, not a ton of updates. A lot of their team got put on the IR after week 1. So a lot of them are just, we know they're going to be out. Cooper Kupp has already been ruled out as well, although not on the IR, still dealing with that high ankle sprain. So it's going to be a little bit of time there. Now, some positive news. Darius Williams, cornerback, expected to return to practice this week. He definitely will be vying for a starting spot. He's someone who will, definitely boost up that defense a little bit. And then on the Packers side, wide receiver Christian Watson dealing with a bit of an MCL high ankle sprain combo there. They're not going to put him on the IR, but it's still something I'm expecting him not to be in this week and probably limited or out the next 2 to 4 weeks. So although it's not going to be, shouldn't be one that lingers for, a month plus, I definitely don't think this is something he's going to be just right back in there. He's going to be taking some time. I would not be playing him for at least the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, again, like we talked a lot about the Rams injuries there, and like you mentioned, with Cooper Kupp already going to be out for at least this week at minimum. I think Sean McVay last week, pretty much early in the week, came on and said that Cooper Kupp was not going to be playing for this Rams team. I want to kind of get your reactions about Jordan Love coming back next week. Obviously, there will be some type of rust there, obviously, for him, after missing a couple weeks there. But in your estimate, how did he look out there, returning from that knee injury after he suffered in week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, like you said, the rust. I was someone who I was fading this week. Obviously, we want to put up a decent stat line, just being so far behind and just getting a lot of garbage time. And they did make a pretty good comeback. I thought he looked okay. I thought the mobility was a bit limited, but I mean, I kind of think this is a little bit of who Jordan Love is, where a little bit of that gunslinger of as far as he's going to have some decent variance. So yeah, maybe he had a little bit more, but he all in all he looked fairly okay. I think, like you mentioned, they're gonna have that brace on. He's gonna kind of get a little bit more mobility each week. But as far as the rust thing, I think we have such a small sample size with him. I really do think like he's gonna be a guy who is viable to throw 4 touchdowns or 3 interceptions every game.
So the injury that he did suffer, is this something that obviously you can re-injure, or that it could get worse if he continues playing on it, that it's not fully healed? Or is it just more rest and recover and hoping that nothing more concerning happens with it?
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about it, but the number one risk for injury is a previous injury to that body part. So whenever you have an injury, there's a bit of re-injury risk. Now there's levels to it. The MCL actually has the best healing potential out of any of the knee ligaments. So This is actually one that I'm not super concerned about. Hamstrings, calves, groins, stuff like that, a lot more concerning for re-injury risk. MCL, not so much. Now, based on mechanism of injury, me and Derek over on our show, we were talking about how there's probably some high ankle sprain things going on just with the way his leg got bent. I know they didn't call it that, so that has some potential to kind of for some re-injury. So something to watch for. But like I said, he actually, was moving around fairly well. The rust was definitely there. He definitely is a bit limited in mobility, but I think he's just going to continue to get a little bit better each week for a mobility standpoint.
All right, before we get to the final couple of games here, let me tell everyone about SGPN's proud partner, Rhythm. It's the #1 AI-powered back betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top-performing models from the leaderboard, or press Build a Model for me, and Rhythm gives you predictions for every game and player prop, and also has a myriad of stats, research, and trend analysis to give you even more betting insights. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also brought to you by BetUS. Bet with the best in the business. BetUS. BetUS has been around for more than 30 years. They easily deposit using cryptocurrency and get lightning fast payouts. US players are always welcome. Use our link to sign up and get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS, promo code SGPN, so they know that we sent you. All right, Sebastian, let's keep it rolling here. A couple of games left here. We'll go with your New York Giants. They are in Seattle to take on the Seahawks. Seahawks currently laying 6 points in this game with a total of 43.5. Any injury concerns in this game between the Giants and the Hawks?
Yeah, I think the big one's Malik Neighbors, right? Picked up a concussion at the very end of that game and Thursday. Now, what we talked about, hey, we're not seeing a lot of 1 week returns. He does have the benefit of having 10 days, right?
Right.
Obviously he said he was, there was a picture that came out that he was good. Like he says he's good, whatever. That doesn't really mean anything. Of course, the player's going to say they're good. But the biggest thing is he's got 10 days of rest in between. So Wednesday, Thursday, like these are very important practices, but he does have a realistic shot to clear this protocol. And I'm kind of almost expecting that he will. Seahawks or Giants also, something to watch. We talked about last game. Two cornerbacks, two of their top 3 cornerbacks were out versus Dallas with calf injuries. Hopefully, in Adoree Jackson and Drew Phillips, hopefully at least 1 or 2 of them, or if not both of them, are back. Because obviously you got JSN, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf there. So if the Giants are missing those guys, that's a big hole in an already shaky defense. Seahawks are definitely a more beat up team though at this point. Almost their entire front 7 was out last night, I should say, against Detroit. Yeah. Their entire D-line, multiple of their linebackers, safety Julian Love got knocked out of the game. So that defense is really hurting. And right now, their right tackle situation is they're rolling with their or third string right tackle due to injury. They just picked up 42-year-old Jason Peters. I don't think a 42-year-old Jason Peters off the couch is the answer to their O-line problems. A team that has 11 sacks already on the season, given up. They're giving up 3 in each of the last 3 games. So something to watch for that O-line. But that defense, man, they're pretty beat up. So we'll see if they get any healthier.
Yeah, and that was really on full display last night for this Seahawks team as the Detroit Lions were just getting whatever they wanted on the offensive side in that game. Let's get to the Sunday Night Football game here. We got the Dallas Cowgirls. They are going to be in Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Steelers currently laying 2.5 points at home here with a total of 43. What are we looking at for injury concerns for the Cowboys and the Steelers here?
Yeah, Steelers definitely a little bit more beat up as far as volume there, but I do think the Cowboys have the more impact on the injury front. So we'll start with those Steelers. Cordero Patterson, who looked good as the backup. I think Najee Harris needs a Jaylen Warren or a Cordero Patterson type to kind of give him that boost, someone to get a little bit of the lightning to the thunder, you would say. But he was unable to return. He got ruled out with an ankle injury. So he was looking good before. We'll have to see there. I didn't see the exact play, but, the fact that he kind of almost got carted off, not a good sign. Jaylen Warren was also out. Both those guys have a chance to play, but right now we just kind of need a little bit more information. Russ Wilson apparently is going to pick up his practice participation. I don't think that makes anything for this week. It's going to be Justin Fields. On the offensive line, starting guard James Daniel, Achilles tear, out for the year. The Steelers' offensive line's already picked up some injuries. However, the guy who was projected to start, Isaac Seumalo, coming over from the Eagles, he was close to returning last week. So that should be a big boost to that lineup there. A guy who was a projected starter to begin the year. So he may slot in very well for James Daniels. So, never want to have a guy go out for the year, but decent timing there. And then Alex Highsmith's going to be already ruled out opposite TJ Watt. Nate Herbig has filled in very nicely for him. So, Highsmith's the more talented player, but I think with TJ Watt on the other side, you're going to get a lot of one-on-ones. For Dallas, the big problem here is their defense has not been a shell of themselves this year. One of the worst against the rush in the league, not getting home with the sacks. And they just lost DeMarcus Lawrence on the IR for at least 4 weeks, more close to 6 to 8. And then Michael Parsons, high ankle sprain. Now, it's not as, detrimental for him as like a wide receiver or running back where it's closer to 4 to 6 weeks. But he's going to be missing at least 2 to 3 weeks. And he's going to be banged up for probably close to a month. So I expect both those guys, Lawrence definitely out. Parsons, I would say 99% chance he's out. And if he's out there, what are they doing? That's just a terrible move by them. So, whether it's Fields rushing, whether it's Najee, whether it's, Pickens with him having more time in the pocket, those are two huge injuries as far as the Dallas Cowboys side of the ball. And on the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's a situation where their O-line, it's kind of a -1+1 situation there. So their injuries, really, it's just going to be who's going to be the RB2 for them.
Yeah, I mean, for the Steelers, you mentioned, right, Cordero Patterson last week. I was heavy on Najee props last week, but he just wasn't able to get it going for whatever reason, especially against that Colts lack thereof rushing defense, I should say. And Cordero Patterson, like you mentioned before he left with the ankle injury, was looking pretty good. And honestly looked like that he was going to start getting the bulk of the carries here, at least in that game in particular, just because how much he was really gashing that Indianapolis Colts defense there. So something definitely keep an eye on. But again, for that defense for the Cowboys, I mean, it just continues to struggle from a week-to-week basis here. So we'll see if they're able to contain this Steelers, rush attack led by Justin Fields and Najee Harris there. Last game on the NFL Week 5 schedule will go to Monday Night Football. We've got the New Orleans Saints. They are headed to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs currently laying 5 points in this game with a total of 42. And maybe a little bit of trouble in paradise for Patrick Mahomes and the offense for the Kansas City Chiefs here, Sebastian. But what we got for Saints and Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the big one, Rashee Rice, right? It's one thing to throw an interception. It's another thing to take out your star wide receiver's knee. So really unfortunate. Patrick Mahomes forced his knee into some hyperextension there. And the initial fear, like what I said immediately, kind of when I texted Derek, I was like, man, it looks like Rashee Rice just tore his ACL. Yeah. Now, look, the consensus initial fear is that it's not good. We have not received news it's his ACL yet. This does create a little bit of pause as far as, I kind of had already thought season ending. The fact that on-field testing for an ACL is pretty damn 99% sure. You get the MRI to be positive. The MRI obviously tells you exactly. So the fact that, they haven't said anything is kind of leaving a little bit of mystery here, but he's getting second opinions. And when he gets second opinions on something, it's usually not a good thing. So, I went from being like 99% ACL tear to maybe 95%. We'll see. Obviously, he's going to be out for some time there. I'd say best case scenario, he comes back in like 6 weeks. But by then, who knows with the suspension and things like that looming. But he's definitely out now. I would be preparing for him to be out all season. But if we get some type of good news, obviously he's going to be out at least a month.
Yeah, I mean, usually if it is an ACL tear, we usually get that news by like Monday morning, if not even like the night of.
Yeah.
For these ACL type of injuries here. So, if you're a Chiefs fan, you maybe were holding your breath, maybe you've loosened that breath a little bit. But I think, like Sebastian mentioned, that if you're seeking second opinions, I think that's a little bit telling there for the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, if he is out going to be, let's just say, an extended amount of time or possibly for the entirety of the season, they're extremely thin now at that wide receiving position, right? Because we talked about it at the beginning of the year where Hollywood Brown is going to be missing the entirety of the year as well for this Kansas City Chiefs team. So Mr. Mahomes is really going to have to work the magic now, or you finally see Travis Kelce. I know he had a pretty good week last week for the Chiefs offense against the Chargers. So hopefully he can, continue the production that we're used to seeing from Travis Kelce for this Chiefs team. So a lot to keep our eyes on as we progress through the week here. And that's why I highly recommend you guys follow Sebastian over on the Twitter machine at the DGenDoc. Just breaks it down beautifully in layman's terms. Honestly, if you're not a smart guy like me when it comes to the medical terms, he puts out great content, videos, breaks it all down for you guys. So definitely make sure you guys follow Sebastian over on Twitter. Sebastian, anything else we need to mention overall for injuries or anything else that you want to get off your chest here?
No, last thing I'll say there on that with the Chiefs, right? Yeah, they're not wide receivers, so maybe Kareem Hunt gets a lot more carries on the ground. Yeah. Carson Steele in the doghouse with a little bit of the fumbles. And Samaje Perine, they seem to just really want him to be a receiving back there. So something to watch for. I think I'll be on some Hunt stuff this week. But other than that, like you mentioned, appreciate definitely, follow the Propcast, follow Munaf as well on the socials. We're always going to be trying to get you this information. And when we just try to, one of the things that we talked about is early access is a big thing, right? So some of these props are going to open up overnight. Some of these props, you may be seeing them and those lines are going to be going all over the place. So that's why if we get the information now, you already know the guys you want to target for the week. And boom, as soon as you see it, I promise you the best number you're going to get is right as soon as it opens. So
yeah, 100%. That's why we try to do these pods as early in the week as possible. But also we want to make sure that we have the right information as well for these injuries that are occurring, from a week-to-week basis here. So and do your due diligence. So like we always say, when you are looking at some of these guys, always try to get the best of the number, because sometimes that 1 or 2 yards can be the difference between winning or losing a prop bet. But also, more importantly, I think a little bit of more of an education process here of how some of the injuries do work. And, when you hear about these injuries, when you tune into this type of episode, that that, hey, maybe you're looking at a guys being out for maybe a week-to-week basis or something that will be a longer stretch for some of these guys. Sebastian, let our listeners know about your show as well on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network and where they can tune in.
Yeah, the DGen Docs, again, me and my buddy Derek, another healthcare professional. We are Monday and Thursdays around 7:15 Eastern time live. We're going to be going over preview of that game, and then Mondays a little more fantasy football centric. Thursdays a little more of the bets. Stay tuned. The show just picked up our very own intern, so we're going to be turning out some
there we
new
go.
content there. We got a contest coming up this week. Very excited to go ahead and announce that. So definitely check us out as a newer show there, the DGen Docs.
Yeah, make sure you guys get over there, check out the DGen Docs, whether it's on your podcast player, Spotify, Google, Apple, or the case might be, but also make sure you guys get over there to their YouTube channel there as well and subscribe, because we will also be going live there when we do this particular show, so you can tune in there as well. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week, talking about some more injuries that do transpire across the league. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off, and always remember to let it ride.